We ran until our feet bled, until the wind turned sharp in our lungs, until the desert sun burned the last drops of water from our bodies. 6 of us, skirts torn, blood and dirt clinging to our skin like a second layer. We left pieces of ourselves on that trail, pieces we would never get back. They were hunting us, men on horses, men with rope and laughter like knives. Men who thought we were property, something to sell, something to break. I was the oldest, 19. They called me Clara, but out there, under the endless New Mexico sun, names didn't matter. Hunger did, thirst did, the way the younger girls cried at night did. We found his ranch at high noon, a patch of fence against the horizon, a crooked windmill turning slow in the dead heat. Smoke curled from the chimney. It smelled like beans, like coffee, like hope. We fell to our knees in the dust. The youngest couldn't stand anymore. The others leaned on each other, trembling, breathing in small, scared gasps. He stood on the porch, one hand gripping a rifle, silent. A big man with a face like weathered stone. His eyes watched us like we were ghosts, or trouble, or both. I was so scared I thought my heart would stop, but I had to speak. If I didn't, we would die there in the dirt. So I lifted my head, cracked lips, a throat that felt like gravel. "Please, mister," I said. My voice shook, my soul shook. "We ain't got nowhere else to go." I swallowed hard. "They're hunting us." And the world held its breath. I wasn't always hunted. I used to stitch dresses in a hot, dusty room in El Paso. My mama taught me how to pull a needle through calico without pricking my fingers. She said a good stitch could hold the world together. I believed her. I was 19, thought I was smart, thought I was ready to leave that room and make something of myself. I wanted to buy a parcel of land somewhere with a creek and enough dirt for a small garden. Then he came. A man with a black hat and gold tooth, said there was work for a quick-handed girl near the border, said there were women needed to sew for mining camps, for rail men, for the ranchers who wanted shirts that didn't fall apart at the seams, said there was a wage, a place to stay, a future. I was stupid. I followed him. They put me on a wagon with other girls, told us to keep quiet, told us to sit still. The desert rolled past, the sky too big, too blue, too empty. We drank from a canteen passed between us, warm water that smelled like tin. It wasn't until the second night when the stars blinked over our heads that I knew. They took our shoes, tied our wrists, laughed when we cried. They sold us to men who smelled like sweat and coal smoke, men who mined the mountains, men who paid to take what they wanted because out there money was law and women were just another thing you could buy. I was cargo, I was property, I was meat. The nights blurred together, the taste of blood in my mouth, the dry scrape of dirt on my skin, the rough hands that took and took until I felt like I wasn't in my body anymore. But I didn't die. Not then. One night, I crawled outside under a moon so bright it hurt my eyes. I found 5 others. There was Mary, 17, hands shaking so hard she could barely hold the piece of broken glass she kept hidden in her dress hem. Said she'd use it if they tried to take her again. There was Anna, 16, pale as milk, hair like winter straw, burning up with fever, shaking so bad she couldn't stand without falling. But she wouldn't stop praying, whispering to a God I wasn't sure was listening. There was Ruth, 25, skin dark like river mud, eyes hollow. She had a baby once, a little boy, but he died in the dust when she couldn't make enough milk. They buried him near the coal piles, no marker, no prayer. There was Rosa, 19, freckles like rust across her nose, who didn't speak. She just stared, her lips cracked, fingers picking at the skin on her arms until they bled. And there was Elsie, 18, blonde curls matted with sweat, who would wake up screaming in the night, clutching her belly where the bruises were deepest. We were all broken in different ways, but that night, we were the same. We were tired of being used, tired of the smell of whiskey breath, tired of the laughter of men who didn't see us as human, tired of the whip, the chains, the dirt, the emptiness. Tired. Anna coughed, and it sounded like the end of everything, but she looked at me, her fever eyes bright, and said, "Clara, I don't want to die here." Neither did I, so we ran. Ruth found a knife in the kitchen where they kept us. Mary cut the ropes on our ankles. Elsie kept watch, whispering when the guards moved. We crawled through a window so small it scraped our backs bloody, but we didn't care. The desert was cold at night, the sand like ice, the wind sharp enough to slice open our lips. We ran barefoot, the rocks tearing open the soft skin of our feet. blood dripping, leaving a trail we prayed they wouldn't follow. But they would. They always did. We hid in the arroyos, under dead mesquite trees, covered ourselves with dirt to hide from the moonlight. We took turns staying awake, shaking each other when sleep tried to steal us. Anna cried for water, her breath rattling, but there was none. We chewed on cactus pulp, sucking out the bitter wetness, praying it wouldn't make us sick. I remember the way the wind sounded, like voices, like ghosts, like all the women who had come before us and failed to get away. They found us on the third day, horses in the distance, dust rising like a promise of death, men with rifles and ropes. They fired a shot and it whined past us, kicked up dust near Mary's feet. She screamed, fell to the ground, but we pulled her up, kept running. We lost Rosa that day. She slipped, twisted her ankle, fell into a ravine, and we had no time, no strength, no mercy from the sky to go back for her. We heard her scream when they found her. Then we heard nothing. Anna's fever worsened, and we had to carry her between us, her head lolling, breath shallow. She whispered her mama's name over and over, her eyes looking past us at something we couldn't see. The sun burned us in the day. The cold bit us at night. The wind chapped our lips, cracked our skin, turned our blood dry. We smelled like fear and sweat and desperation. On the sixth day, we saw a fence line, a windmill creaking. Smoke, thin and pale, rising into a sky that felt like it might swallow us whole. Hope. It was the kind of hope that hurts because you don't trust it anymore. Because you know the world is cruel and you're scared to believe it could be kind again. We held each other standing at the edge of that ranch, watching the porch, waiting for someone to appear. Then he stepped out. A tall man, shoulders broad, a rifle in one hand. Eyes like storms, like winter, like a man who had seen death and made peace with it. We fell to our knees, dirt puffing around us, sticking to the blood on our skin. Mary was shaking, clutching my hand so hard it hurt. Ruth was breathing heavy, her eyes scanning the horizon for the men we knew were coming. Anna was unconscious, head on my lap, her skin hot, breath thin. Elsie was crying, tears cutting lines through the dust on her face. I looked up at him, my lips cracked open, and I said it, because I had to, because it was the only thing left to say. "Please, mister." My voice broke. I swallowed tasted blood. "We ain't got nowhere else to go." I looked into his eyes, searching, begging, hoping. "They're hunting us." We didn't stop running. We couldn't. Every breath felt like fire. Every step tore open the cuts on our feet, left more blood in the dust. They were coming. We heard them at night, the sound of hooves on hardpan, the jingle of spurs, the low voices of men who thought they were gods, men who smelled like whiskey and gunpowder, men who laughed in the dark. They had dogs. We heard the howls across the canyons, closer each night. We had to move when the moon was high, when the cold bit our skin, when the stars looked down and didn't care. We had one blanket between us. We ripped it in strips to wrap around Anna's arms, around Mary's bleeding feet, around Ruth's chest where a rib might have cracked when she fell down a wash. We carried Anna when she couldn't walk. Her fever made her mumble about her mama, about a creek she used to play in, about the color blue. I told her she'd see that creek again. I lied. We found a dry arroyo, hid there when the sun burned the sky, took turns keeping watch, eyes heavy, heads nodding, fighting the sleep that came like a thief. We heard them once, riding close. We pressed ourselves into the dirt, barely breathing, praying the horses wouldn't catch our scent. Ruth held Anna's mouth shut so she wouldn't cry out. We could see the dust on the boots of the man riding past us. We could see the gun on his hip. When they were gone, we crawled out, and we ran again. We had no water. We chewed cactus pulp, gagging at the taste, the slime in our throats. Mary started to cough blood on the third day. She wiped it away, eyes wild, and said she was fine. She wasn't. We found a cattle trail, followed it because where there was cattle, there was water. But they found us there. They found Rosa first. She was the quietest of us, always looking back, always watching the horizon. They caught her while she was gathering mesquite beans, hoping to find something we could eat. We heard her scream. We saw them drag her back to camp. We hid on a ridge and watched because we couldn't look away. That's when I saw him, Marshal Garrett. He sat on his horse like a man born there, black hat pulled low, badge catching the light of the campfire. He didn't speak much, didn't need to. He pointed. 2 men pulled Rosa to her feet, tied a rope around her neck. She was crying, begging. One of the men laughed, spit on the ground, kicked the crate out from under her. Her body swung in the firelight. I covered Anna's eyes. Mary fell to her knees, shaking, whispering prayers. Ruth didn't look away. I saw Marshal Garrett tip his hat back, take a drink, and turn away like it was nothing, like she was nothing. They left her hanging there as a warning, and it worked. We were so scared we didn't speak for a whole day. We kept moving, heads low, eyes hollow. I remember the sound of the wind in the canyons, the way it howled, the way it made the rope around Rosa's neck creak. I remember the way Anna clung to me, burning up, whispering, "Don't let them take me." I promised her they wouldn't. Another lie. They were always close, always just a ridge away, just a canyon over, just beyond the next rock. We found a trickle of water in a creek bed, muddy and warm, but it was water. We drank it, even when it tasted like dirt. Mary knelt down to drink and cried because it felt so good on her cracked lips. But we couldn't stay. At night, we saw their campfires on the hills. I knew if we stopped, they would catch us, and if they caught us, they would kill us. Or worse. We kept moving. Anna got weaker. We carried her, but she was heavy, dead weight, sweat slick on her skin, her breath shallow. She begged us to leave her. "Please, Clara," she whispered. "I don't want them to hurt me." I told her to hold on. Told her we were almost safe. Told her there was a ranch ahead, a place with a well, with a fence, with a man who might help us. We didn't know if it was true. We just needed to believe in something. When we heard the dogs again, closer, we ran. We ran even when our legs burned, even when the night was black as coal, even when we stumbled, even when we fell. I fell once, twisted my ankle, felt something snap, but I got up, because I had to. Because I knew if I stayed down, they would find me. They would find Anna, Ruth, Mary, Elsie. They would drag us back. They would laugh. They would take everything, again. One night, Mary fell behind. We didn't see her go. One minute she was there, the next gone. We waited for her, whispered her name. No answer. We found her boot prints leading away, back toward the sound of horses. She went to buy us time. I think about that sometimes. The way she turned back so we could keep going. The way we had to keep going, even when every part of us wanted to stop. Even when the desert tried to swallow us, even when the stars were cold, even when the wind carried the sound of men laughing, men hunting, men who thought they owned us. I knew if I stopped, they would kill me, or worse. I kept moving, we all did. Until one morning when the sky was pink with dawn, we saw it. A fence line, a crooked windmill turning in the breeze, a ranch, a man, a chance. The desert doesn't care if you live or die. It doesn't care if you're 19 with your whole life ahead, or 16 and burning with fever, or 25 and hollow from grief. It doesn't care. We crawled when we couldn't walk anymore. On our hands and knees, over rocks that sliced open our palms, over sand that burned in the day and froze at night. Our tears mixed with sweat, dripped onto the ground and dried before they hit the dirt. Our dresses were rags, torn at the hem, ripped at the seams. Dust clung to us, filled our mouths, turned our hair into stiff ropes that scratched our necks. Anna was the youngest, 16, so small she looked like a child. Her hair pale as moonlight, her skin hot like fire. She couldn't walk. So I carried her, lifted her onto my back, her arms around my shoulders, her breath in my ear, shallow, rasping, saying my name. Clara, over and over. Clara. My legs shook with every step. The soles of my feet were raw, split open, leaking blood that left dark spots in the sand. Thorns from desert brush bit into my ankles, stayed there, broke off under the skin. Every step was pain. Every breath tasted like metal. Elsie tried to help, but she was limping, holding her side where she'd fallen the night before. Ruth took Anna for a while, but she almost collapsed, and I had to take her back. Anna's fever made her heavy. Or maybe it was the weight of everything we had lost. We found a patch of shade under a rock outcropping when the sun got too high to keep going. We huddled there, pressing close, sharing what little warmth we had when the wind blew cold across the flats. We didn't talk much. There was nothing left to say. We were too thirsty, too tired, too scared. When the clouds came, we lifted our faces to the sky, praying for rain. When it came, thin and cold, we took off our hats, let the drops collect, drank them down, let them run over our cracked lips. It was the sweetest water I ever tasted. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. We chewed on roots we dug out of the hard ground, bitter and stringy, making us gag, but we swallowed them anyway. They scratched our throats going down, sat like stones in our bellies. Better than nothing. At night, we heard the hyenas, laughing in the dark, following us, waiting for us to fall. We saw their eyes, yellow and hungry, blinking from the edges of the fire we managed to build once, using dried brush and a spark from a rock. We kept the fire small. We couldn't risk the men seeing it. We couldn't risk the dogs catching our scent. So we let it die, curled up in the sand, the cold creeping into our bones, making us shiver so hard our teeth clacked. Anna shivered too, even with the fever burning her up. She was so light, so small, her head on my lap, her eyes opening sometimes, glassy, unfocused. She called for her mother. "Ma, Mama," over and over, soft, a ghost voice in the dark. I stroked her hair, matted and dirty, whispered to her that it was going to be okay, that we were going to find help, that we were going to find water, food, a safe place. I lied. I started hearing things too. Voices on the wind, my mama's voice, soft, calling my name, telling me to come home, telling me it was okay to rest, telling me to close my eyes just for a little while, and I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But every time I felt myself slipping, every time the darkness crept in, I would feel Anna's hand, weak, clutching my sleeve. She needed me. They all did. Elsie with her quiet sobs in the dark. Ruth, who sat with her back against a rock, eyes open, watching the dark, knife in her hand. Anna, burning up, her skin hot enough to warm my frozen hands. They needed me to keep going. So I did. Even when I thought I was going to die. Even when the blisters on my feet burst and filled my shoes with blood. Even when my lips cracked so bad I tasted blood every time I tried to speak. Even when the sun came up and I wanted to scream because I couldn't take another day of heat, of walking, of fear. I kept going, because I knew if I stopped, they would die. And if they died, it would be like I died too. So we moved at night, when it was cold, when the stars wheeled above us, bright and cruel. We hid during the day, under rocks, in dry riverbeds, in the shadows of cactus stands. We listened for horses. We listened for dogs. We listened for men's laughter. They were out there. We could feel them, getting closer. We were ghosts, slipping through the desert, leaving blood and hope behind us, until we saw it. A fence line, a windmill, a wisp of smoke. And in that moment, I felt something break inside me, because I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe there was a man there who might take pity, a man who would see us not as trouble, not as property, not as bodies to be used and thrown away, but as people, as girls, as daughters, as sisters, as human. But the desert doesn't care, and men are often worse. So we walked, dragging our feet, Anna moaning softly, Elsie's arm around Ruth, my hands clutching Anna's thin legs around my waist, step by step, toward the smoke, toward the fence, toward the man on the porch with a rifle in his hand and a shadow on his face, hoping he would see us, hoping he would not turn us away, because we were done. We were done running, done hiding, done bleeding in the dirt with nothing to show for it. We had nothing left to lose, except our lives, and even that felt like it didn't belong to us anymore. We saw it at dawn. Smoke, thin and gray, rising slow into the pale morning sky, curling above the dry brush like a promise. A ranch, fence lines cutting across the earth, a windmill creaking in the breeze, a small cabin with a crooked chimney, boards weathered by sun and storms. We stopped on the ridge, the six of us. Anna was so light on my back, it felt like she was already gone. Her breath was soft, warm against my neck, each exhale a whisper of hope and fear. Elsie stood beside me, holding Ruth's hand, their eyes hollow, their lips cracked. We could see a figure moving on the porch, a man, big shoulders, a hat pulled low over his face, a rifle resting easy in his hands, like he'd held it so long it was part of him. Smoke came from the chimney, maybe coffee on the fire, maybe beans. My mouth filled with water I didn't have. The girls looked at me. I looked back at them, at their torn dresses, their bruised arms, the blood dried on their legs from too many miles. I saw the fear and the hope, because we had nothing left. This was it. One last chance. Or none. We walked down the slope, slow, careful, the sand sliding under our feet. Each step felt like it might be the last. Closer. We could see the man clearer now, a gray beard along a hard jaw, eyes shadowed under the brim of his hat, hands steady on that rifle, watching us. We stopped a few yards from the fence. Anna moaned on my back, too weak to lift her head. Elsie dropped to her knees first, then Ruth, then the others. One by one, they knelt in the dust, hands trembling, heads bowed. The sun came up behind us, painting long shadows across the dry earth. I stood for a moment longer, the wind tugging at the rags of my dress, the air cold on the cuts on my legs. Then I knelt too. The dirt was cold on my knees. Sharp rocks bit into my skin. I didn't care. I looked up. He was still watching, silent. The barrel of that Winchester glinted in the morning light. I saw his finger resting on the trigger, calm, ready. His eyes moved across us, slow, careful, taking in every detail. 6 girls on their knees, starving, bleeding, begging. We must have looked like ghosts, or trouble, or both. My mouth was so dry it hurt to open it. My lips cracked, split, a line of blood trickling down my chin. I tasted iron. I swallowed, took a breath that felt like it scraped my lungs, and I spoke. "Please, mister." My voice was small, thin, nothing like the girl I used to be, nothing like the girl who laughed while sewing dresses in El Paso, nothing like the girl who thought the world was fair. "Mister." I tried again, my voice breaking. I swallowed, tears burning my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I couldn't. I wouldn't. "We ain't got nowhere else to go." I felt the girls behind me shift, leaning into each other, sobs catching in their throats. "They're hunting us." The wind caught the words, carried them across the dry yard, up to the porch where he stood. He didn't move. His hands tightened on the rifle, the wood creaking under his grip. His eyes met mine, dark, tired, wary, like a man who had seen too much, lost too much, learned to trust nothing and no one. For a moment, the world went silent. No wind, no birds, no sound but the beating of my heart, loud in my ears, so loud I thought it would break. I held his gaze, and in that moment I saw it. A flicker, a crack in the hard shell around him, a spark of something. Recognition. Maybe he saw himself in us. Maybe he saw his daughter, his wife, someone he failed, someone he lost. I don't know, but I saw it. And I held on to it like it was life itself. He looked away, his jaw tightening, the muscles in his neck working. His finger slid off the trigger. He shifted the rifle, resting the barrel down, the tip in the dust. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of smoke and coffee, warm, bitter, alive. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Elsie sobbed. Ruth closed her eyes. Anna stirred on my back, whispering my name. "Clara." The man stepped forward down one step of the porch, boots thudding on the wood, heavy, certain. I flinched. I couldn't help it, but I didn't look away. I wouldn't. He stopped at the edge of the porch, looking down at us, the rifle still in his hand but pointed away. His eyes moved across us again. Then they came back to me, and for the first time I saw the man behind the rifle, saw the hurt, saw the loneliness, saw the fear. And maybe he saw mine too. The wind shifted, lifting the hair from my face, carrying the smell of sweat, blood, and dust up to him. He didn't flinch, didn't step back. He just looked at me, and I looked back. 2 souls, battered, broken, standing on the edge of something neither of us could name. Hope, fear, salvation, or death. I didn't know which. I just knew I couldn't run anymore. None of us could. So I stayed on my knees, waiting, breathing, bleeding, and hoping that this man, this stranger in the wild, would see us, would see me, would see that we were worth saving, even if the world said we weren't. We didn't know if he would help us. We were 6 girls on our knees, covered in dust and blood, begging in the dirt. He could have sent us away, could have told us to keep moving, could have turned his back, but he didn't. He looked at me one last time, eyes dark and tired, then turned and walked inside. The door slammed shut. We stayed there, kneeling, the wind cold on our skin, the sun crawling higher, burning the backs of our necks. Anna whimpered on my back, her fever making her shake. Ruth reached for my hand. Elsie was crying, quiet, like she didn't even know she was doing it. I wanted to cry too, but I was too empty. The door creaked open. We flinched. He stepped out, rifle still in his hands. He scanned the horizon, slow, careful, like a man who'd spent years waiting for something to come over that ridge. Then he set the rifle down. He didn't say a word, just looked at us and nodded. Then he turned and walked back inside, leaving the door open behind him, an invitation. We looked at each other, unsure. Then I stood. My knees shook so hard I almost fell, but I stayed up. I shifted Anna on my back, felt her head roll against my shoulder, her breath hot and ragged. Then I stepped forward, into the dark of his cabin. It smelled like coffee and smoke and something warm. Home. The others followed, quiet, heads down, stepping into that small room like it was the last church left in the world. He closed the door behind us, locked it. We all jumped at the sound. He moved past us, boots heavy on the wooden floor, and picked up his rifle again. He checked the bullets, the way a man does when he's done it 1,000 times before. I swallowed. My mouth felt like sand. I found my voice. They'll come for us. He didn't look up. I know. They'll kill you for helping us. He paused, looked at me. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but there was something there. Something like peace. I know. I wanted to tell him to send us away, that it wasn't worth it, that we weren't worth it. But I didn't, because I wanted to live. We all did. So we stood there, 6 girls in a stranger's cabin, watching him load bullets into that rifle while the wind outside picked up, rattling the shutters like bones. The sun dropped lower, shadows grew long across the floor. We heard them before we saw them, hoofbeats, slow, steady, rolling across the dry earth like thunder. I looked at him. He didn't move, didn't speak, just waited. The hoofbeats stopped. Silence. Then a voice. Deep, confident, cruel. "Thaddeus Bell," it called out. "We know you're in there." Ruth gasped. Elsie clutched her arm. Anna whimpered. A soft, broken sound. I stepped to the window, peeking through the crack in the boards. They were out there. Horses. Men. Guns glinting in the last light of day. Ropes hanging from saddles like promises. And at the front, on a black horse, sat a man in a dark coat and a badge pinned to his chest. Marshal Garrett. I'd seen him before. He was the reason we ran, the reason Rosa died, the reason we were here. "Thaddeus!" Garrett called again, his voice dripping with that false calm that men like him wore like a second skin. "Hand them over, and we'll let you live." Thaddeus stood in the middle of the room, rifle in hand, his back straight, his jaw tight. He didn't answer, didn't even blink. He looked at me, and I saw it. The choice, the moment, and he made it. He stepped forward, past us, to the door. He unlocked it, opened it. The cold air rushed in, smelling of dust and horses and gun oil. He stepped outside. We followed, afraid, but unable to stay behind. The sky was purple, the stars blinking awake, the world holding its breath. Garrett sat on his horse, a cruel smile on his face. Behind him, men shifted, hands near guns, eyes hungry. Garrett lifted a hand, waving lazily. "Evening, Thaddeus," he said. "Just give them to us, and you can go back to your quiet life." Thaddeus didn't answer. Garrett's smile dropped. "Don't make me take them." Thaddeus lifted the rifle, slow, steady, until it was pointed at Garrett's chest. The world froze. A wind kicked up, stirring the dust around our feet. Garrett's eyes narrowed. "You think they're worth dying for, old man?" he hissed. Thaddeus didn't move, didn't speak. But in that silence, I heard the answer. He was choosing us, over his peace, over his solitude, over everything. Because some things are worth fighting for, even if it kills you. Garrett's hand twitched toward his gun, and the world exploded. Gunshots cracked through the dark, muzzle flashes lit up the yard, horses screamed, men shouted. I saw Thaddeus fire, the rifle kicking against his shoulder, the look on his face calm, determined. Elsie screamed and dropped to the ground. Ruth pulled Anna down with her, shielding her body. I dropped too, hands over my head, dirt in my mouth, the taste of blood and fear thick on my tongue. Bullets splintered the porch, sparks flew from the wood, men fell from their saddles screaming. I looked up, saw Thaddeus standing there, a lone figure against the chaos, firing, reloading, firing again, standing between us and them, choosing us, over the silence he had built, over the safety he had guarded, over the life he thought he wanted. I saw Garrett's horse rear, saw the fear on his face, saw him turn to run, and Thaddeus lowered the rifle. Let him go. The men who could still move followed, riding hard into the dark, leaving behind the dead and the dying. And then it was quiet. The smoke drifted in the cold air. Thaddeus stood there, breathing hard, blood on his sleeve. He turned, looked at us, and in that moment I knew he wasn't alone anymore, and neither were we. When the smoke cleared, we were still alive. The yard was littered with spent shells, blood drying in the dirt, the scent of gunpowder and sweat hanging in the cold air. Garrett and his men were gone. We were here, alive. We buried the ones we lost. Anna's fever took her before sunrise, her hand clutching mine, eyes looking past me to someplace quiet, someplace soft. We wrapped her in an old quilt, the only color in that hard land, and laid her in the earth behind the barn. Ruth said a prayer. Elsie wept. I couldn't cry, not yet. We stood around the grave, the wind cold on our faces, the sky too big, too blue, too empty. Then we went back inside. Thaddeus fixed the broken door, hammering nails with hands that shook only a little. We helped. We cooked what little food he had, washed the blood from the floor, built a fire that crackled warm in the hearth. The 6 of us, now 5, moving around that cabin like we belonged, like we were home. That night, I sat by the fire, the others sleeping close, breathing soft, alive. Thaddeus sat in his chair, rifle across his lap, watching the door, the windows, the dark, watching over us. And I realized something. I used to think the world was full of monsters, men who took and broke and laughed while doing it. But that night, I saw a man willing to stand, willing to fight, willing to bleed for people he didn't know. And I saw hope. If you believe there are still people worth fighting for, stay with us. We have more stories to tell. Stories of the Wild West, stories of survival, stories of hope. There is something about the desert that teaches you what matters. The endless sky, the silence between the wind gusts, the way the stars watch you at night, cold and bright, reminding you how small you are, how fragile life is. When I think about what happened on that ranch, what we survived, I remember the fear most of all. The fear of being hunted, the fear of not being seen as human, the fear of dying alone in the dirt, forgotten like so many before us. But fear wasn't the only thing we found out there. We found choice. We found the power that comes when you decide to stand, even if your legs are shaking. When you decide to protect what is good, even if the world says it's not worth saving. Thaddeus Bell, that quiet rancher who lived alone for years, made a choice. He could have turned us away. He could have shut his door, kept his life small, safe, quiet, but he didn't. He opened his door. He picked up his rifle. He stood between us and the darkness, and in that moment, he changed everything. We often think we have to be heroes to make a difference, that we need power, position, or strength. But the truth is, most heroes are just people who choose to do what is right when it would be easier to walk away. That is the lesson I carry with me. The world can be cruel. People will fail you. Some will try to break you, but the world is also full of people who will help you stand when you can't. People who will share their last piece of bread. People who will open their doors when you have nowhere else to go. And you can be that person too. You don't need a ranch in the middle of nowhere. You don't need a rifle or a history of fighting battles. You just need a heart willing to see others as human, to see people as worth saving, worth helping, worth protecting, because one day you will be the one on your knees, tired and broken, with nothing left to give, and you will need someone to reach down and say, "Come in." What we went through on that ranch was brutal. We lost people we loved. We saw things we will never forget. But we also saw courage. We saw kindness. We saw hope. That's what I want you to take from this story. Hope. No matter how dark your days are, no matter how heavy the weight you carry, you can find hope in the smallest acts of courage, in the quiet choices to care for others, in the moments when you decide not to turn away, even when it would be easier. Life is never going to be fair. There will always be people like Marshall Garrett, people who use power to hurt, who think they can take whatever they want. But there will also always be people like Thaddeus who decide to stand up even if it costs them everything. And there will always be people like you, standing at the edge of choice. You can look at the world and see monsters, or you can look deeper and see the people worth fighting for. The people who need you to open your door. The people who will become family when you least expect it. You have that choice, every day, to stand, to protect, to open your door, to be the reason someone else survives. We came to that ranch with nothing, no food, no water, no hope. We were broken, hunted, and terrified. We left that ranch changed, not because the world had changed, but because we had. We learned that even in a cruel, harsh world, goodness can live, that hope can breathe, that kindness can save lives. It saved ours, and maybe, if you let it, it will save yours too, because it's easy to close your door, to mind your business, to let the world pass you by. But the good things in life, the things that matter, they live on the other side of that fear, on the other side of comfort. They live in the moments when you choose to care, when you choose to fight for someone else, when you choose to open your door. So if you take anything from this story, let it be this. You are stronger than you know, you are braver than you think, and you are needed in this world exactly as you are. Open your door, pick up your courage, stand for what is right, because there are people out there who need you to be that person. People who are tired, people who are scared, people who are on their knees, looking for someone, anyone, who will help, and you can be that someone. If this story moved you, if you believe there are still people worth fighting for, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here, we tell stories of the Wild West that are not just about gunfights and dusty roads, but about courage, sacrifice, and the small choices that change lives. Stay with us, because there are more stories to tell, stories that will remind you that hope is never truly gone, stories that will challenge you to open your door, to choose kindness, and to live with courage. If you're ready to walk that road with us, click subscribe and turn on notifications. Leave a comment below and tell us, who would you stand for? Who would you open your door for? And remember, the world may be hard, but there is still goodness worth protecting. There are still people worth saving, and you are stronger than you know. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next story.